Hi, thanks for tuning into my presentation. I'm Eric Schneider, and I'm going to be telling you about my collaborative research with folks from Baja California and the University of Utah, which has been investigating whether age profiles of Choyero knowledge development are consistent with life history theory predictions about the timing of productivity and reproduction. Life history models, particularly the embodied capital model, suggest that especially long human lifespan and our intelligent large brains co-evolved in subsistence niches where survival and fitness depend on the downward provisioning of resources and information in multi-generational family structures, and on the complex skills requiring a great deal of learning and accumulated knowledge. Previous research has focused on the development of food production and the provisioning of energetic resources over the lifespan. The research I'm presenting here expands the scope of inquiry by considering the life course development of information accumulation and knowledge retrieval, particularly concerning plants and animals. Both life history theory from biology and life cycle economics deal with trade-offs under the constraints of a mortality schedule. Economic models of human capital consider the trade-offs between investments in an individual's education, job training, foregone earnings during times of education and training, and delayed but higher earnings after education and training are completed. Health economics similarly considers the trade-offs for individuals between investing in their own health capital and enjoying good health versus productivity working or enjoying leisure. Biological models of disposable soma and immortal germlines consider fitness maximization in light of trade-offs between growth, repair, defense, and reproduction. Informed by these life cycle and life history models, the embodied capital perspective considers how individuals and their parents optimally invest in growing and maintaining the body's physical capital, for example, bones, muscles, neurons, and functional capital, for example, strength and coordination, skill, and knowledge. According to embodied capital theory, extreme investments in cognitive capital have led to a human life history pattern of complementary age-appropriate knowledge profiles developing across the lifespan for women and men as they experience changes in their stocks of embodied capital and demand of their dependent offspring. My research has been motivated by a set of overarching research questions. Namely, how does a long evolved lifespan in humans shape learning and the development of human capital? Specifically, I'd like to understand what knowledge develops earliest and why. And at what age is knowledge and wisdom greatest? Is there more support for a wise adult or a wisdom of elders characterization of knowledge development? General life history models applied to primate foraging suggest that effort allocated to productivity, which also includes the acquisition of knowledge, should increase up until physical maturation, but then plateau for the remainder of the life course. This informs the wise adult's view, which suggests that wisdom of young adults should be similar to that of older adults. For example, seen with the black dashed line in the figure. And a different view, held widely among social scientists, is that vocabulary and worldly knowledge, which some call crystallized intelligence, continues to accumulate past the age of physical maturation, resulting in wisdom of elders, as seen with the solid red line on the figure. Here you see the Baja California Peninsula of Mexico, sometimes called the Forgotten Peninsula because it's been understudied and underdeveloped compared to the Mexican mainland. And because some of its inhabitants still live quite similar to how their ancestors did over 200 years ago. Here's another map showing the distribution of Choyero ranches in the 4 communities of the Sierra de la Giganta Mountains where we've been working. The Giganta is a desert mountain range on the eastern edge of Baja California Sur. Biogeographically, it's characterized as Sonoran desert. Rainfall is scarce and concentrated in the summer monsoonal rains and hurricanes during July, August, and September. And in the dry watersheds, you'll find the occasional freshwater spring, which typically supports a ranch and a verdant oasis. Approximately 4,000 people, known as Choyeros, currently occupy the Giganta. Choyeros refer to themselves by this name, which roughly means people of the Choya cactus desert. Here you see a large Choya cactus from the Giganta. Historically, and still today, Choyeros remain relatively isolated from the larger Mexican society and infrastructure services. The primary subsistence mode is goat and cattle ranching with an emphasis on meat and cheese production for occasional export by roaming merchants to local and regional markets. Huertas, shown here, are typically tended by adult male and female family members and provide edible foods for the household, as well as feed for domestic livestock. Beyond their collaboration in the huertas, Choyeros have gender-divided labor domains and ecologies that affect the gender's differential exposure to plants, which vary by ecology. Jardinas, or house gardens, such as these, are most often tended by female heads of household and serve important household functions, such as providing shade, decorative flowers, herbs for cooking, and teas and medicine. When not tending to livestock near the ranch, men are most often tending to livestock in the campo or the open-range desert wilderness of the giganta. And while Choyero children can assist with parents with household chores, they don't engage in substantial ranch work outside of the house. The ethnobiological knowledge assessment task included a vision acuity test that used a tumbling E eye charts, and that produced scores on a 1 to 11 scale potentially. And as can be seen in this figure, pre-reproductive and reproductive aged adults all scored perfect 11s. So all the variation is actually among the post-reproductive adults. The ethnobiological knowledge assessment task used 137 slides featuring 87 plants and 50 animals. And the order we presented these was controlled. Half of our participants received them in forward order and the other half reversed. For each slide shown, which featured multiple pictures of a given species, the participant was asked in Spanish, "Do you recognize this or have you seen this before?" And we recorded yes or no answers. And if they answered yes, they were asked the follow-up question. And what is it called? So what explains ethnobiological knowledge across all life stages? To answer this question, we use multi-level logistic regressions that nest the outcome variable at both the level of the individual and the ranch. After fitting two-stage models, the first stage predicts probability of recognizing, the second stage predicts probability of correctly naming a recognized item. We find that reported recognition of plant and animal species takes a quadratic concave shape over the life course, and that better visual acuity is associated with improved ability to recognize. Educational achievement has no effect on recognition, and the difference between males and females' recognition is not significant. We find that the ability to correctly name recognized species takes a quadratic concave shape over the life course, as you can see in the figure here, and that better visual acuity is associated with improved ability to correctly name. Educational achievement has no effect, and males correctly name recognized species more than females. To evaluate whether the rates of ethnobiological knowledge development in pre-reproductive individuals are continuously increasing yet different for species that are potentially dangerous in food compared to those that are not, we use a two-stage model of ethnobiological knowledge across the lifespan. In the second stage of this model, we find that the ability to correctly name recognized species continuously increases during the pre-reproductive life stage, and that correct naming of dangerous and/or food species increases by 80% compared to other species. The figure shows that the greater knowledge of food and dangerous species clearly emerges by age 11 and remains evident across reproductive and post-reproductive life stages. To address predictions about gender differences across economic domains, we rely on two subsets of our data. One which concerns the Jardín plants only, and another which concerns campo plants only. So we assess the role of age and gender on these different types of plant knowledge in the reproductive lifespan by looking at the results of multi-level two-stage logistic regression models. Here I'll report only the second stage of these models, concerning the ability to correctly name recognized Jardín plants and to correctly name recognized campo plants, respectively. So our first model shows that males correctly name fewer Jardín plants than females do, And our second model shows that males correctly name more compoplants than females do. And according to these estimates, reproductive age females are 45% more likely to correctly name the Hardin plants, whereas reproductive age males are 50% more likely to name the compoplants. What explains ethnobiological knowledge in the post-reproductive life stage? So many of these post-reproductive aged adults, but not all, are the top experts for ethnobiological knowledge. They're the most representative of the top decile of knowledge scores in our sample, occupying 7 out of 8 of the highest ranks for recognizing and correctly naming plants and animals. However, on average, post-reproductive adults correctly name 3.7% fewer plants and animals. And another interesting thing going on in this post-reproductive life stage is that the male advantage for correctly naming compoplants that was noted on the last slide for reproductive aged males has decreased and is not as large in the post-reproductive life stage. So to evaluate whether the rates of ethnobiological knowledge in post-reproductive adults are predicted by visual acuity, age, gender, and gender-associated economic domains, we employ a pair of multi-level two-stage logistic regression models that consider only adults in the post-reproductive lifespan. These models rely on two subsets of our data for this age group, one that examines Hardin plants only, and a second that examines compoplants only. And so here I report only results of the second stage of these models concerning male and female abilities to correctly name recognized Hardin plants and compoplants. We find that gender is a significant predictor of correctly naming recognized Hardin plants even after controlling for age and visual acuity, with post-reproductive females able to name more of the Hardin plants they recognize than post-reproductive males. Among post-reproductive adults, we do not find an effect of gender on correctly naming recognized compoplants after controlling for age and visual acuity. To sum up our results, we find that Choyeros have great local ecological knowledge and develop age-appropriate complementary knowledge profiles as males and females experience changes in their embodied capital and the needs of their dependent offspring. We see that knowledge of food and potentially dangerous species is quite well developed by the beginning of reproductive adulthood. And the development of additional knowledge continues throughout reproductive adulthood with the increase in offspring demands. Patterns of ethnobiological knowledge development across the lifespan for males and females depend on their domain of mastery, with women's house gardens and men's herding activities in the wilderness. Our models show peak predicted ethnobiological knowledge for men and women in the range of approximately 35 to 65 years of age. And the most expert levels of our observed ethnobiological knowledge are found among many post-reproductive aged adults. And this is important because it's that expert knowledge which is so crucial to downward transmission within a subsistence society. Our results support the embodied capital model of human life history evolution, where long life evolves in difficult subsistence niches with net resource flows from older to younger kin in a multi-generational family. And we see support for both a wise adults and a nuanced wisdom of elders' view of ethnobiological knowledge development by showing the effects of vision on ethnobiological knowledge and the possible effects of reduced activity by older adults in the compo on the revealed knowledge of compo plants. Finally, I'd like to briefly extend the discussion beyond the Choyero data. Most of our societies are now experiencing graying, where the proportion of older adults grows daily. This imposes burgeoning economic challenges, increasing demands for older worker employment. Yet employers avoid employing older workers, a form of discrimination that can bring more costs than savings. Skirvik showed that where workers are using learning and speed for problem solving, productivity decreases from around 50 years of age. While where experience and verbal abilities are important, older workers maintain high productivity. My studies among the Chimani, hunter-horticulturalists of the Bolivian Amazon, find similar age profiles for low-strength, cognitively difficult skill development and oral tradition transmission, helping explain contributions of older adults. These Chimani and Choyeros studies suggest an older worker advantage. Older adults can uniquely provide their juniors downward transmission of information acquired over a lifespan. My hope is that we can raise awareness of these opportunities. I want to thank my academic collaborators and also the kind Choyero people who invited us into their homes and shared their lives and knowledge with us, and the generous institutions that funded this research. Thanks so much for your interest, and feel free to reach out to me by email with comments, questions, or ideas for collaboration.